decisions that will have an impact in your organization and employees. I'd like to introduce James Slotnick. He's the Assistant Vice President of Government Relations for Sun Life Financial US. James represents Sun Life's interest to elected officials and regulators focusing on issues that impact group life, disability, dental, vision, voluntary, and then medical stop-loss industries as well. As I mentioned, James has been on just a back-to-back webinar series, so we're very thankful that he's able to give us some more of his time today. For those of you that joined us Monday, it will be a bit of a recap, but James will also weave in the updates that have occurred since that time. If you have questions, please submit them through the webinar. We will pause at 2 separate points throughout this presentation to answer any questions that anyone may have. So with that, James, again, we really appreciate you quickly offering us your insights to Haran, our clients, and our friends. So we'll let you take it from here.
No worries. No, thank you. And again, sorry for being a couple minutes late. I had a minor heart attack. I couldn't find the link, but Steve or someone sent it to me, so I appreciate that. I also was desperately trying to get lunch on the table for my kids, and then telling them absolutely not to come in my office for the next hour and just watch TV. So I think we're good. We're good there as well. But yeah, so this it's unbelievable. The last couple of days have been. Yesterday was the most stressful day of my entire career. The CARES Act, which just got through the Senate yesterday, was early yesterday morning, was right on the fence, and it is such an important piece of legislation. For those of you that, particularly for those of you that have businesses that you have less than 500 employees, and those of you that have larger, there's great stuff in there too. But there are some meaningful loan provisions, forgivable loan provisions in this legislation that if the COVID-19 coronavirus insanity has affected your business, there's some real relief that's in there. And we're gonna our CEO, we obviously have more than 500 employees at Sun Life, but last night my CEO decided he wanted to become an expert on the provisions for the loan under 500 employee loans. So I have a pretty good handle on them. That when we get to that point, I can sort of talk through what you can get, what it means for your employees, what it means for you. But before we get into that part, we will go through what passed last week, which seems like a million years ago, because there are some new compliance requirements and there's some new Department of Labor guidance that's come out, just in the last day or two, that really help us understand what you as a business owner, or what as someone that's controlling the benefits for your company, what you are going to have to do. So, it's on the slide there is what a crazy, this month has been just it's, what can you say? We're all sort of going through this together. But it feels like March 6th, which, seems like a different lifetime ago. When there was that $8.3 billion package that was really to shore up the state and federal response to COVID-19. Some people, Democrats and Republicans, thought that was too much. That $8.3 billion was too much. And now we get to today where the Senate, last night or this morning passing the CARES Act, which is a $2 trillion with a T, $2 trillion package. And when, I'm not an economist or anything like that, but when you look at what some of the things that the Fed is doing, some people are saying that actually it's $6 trillion that's being spent right now to try to keep the economy moving to combat the coronavirus. So, man, it's like you just got to take a breath. But but that said, again, I think the bill passed yesterday in the Senate, real economic relief for every American, or for Americans that need it the most, and then real economic relief for business owners to try to help keep individuals on their payrolls. So what we're going to do is we're going to start off by focusing on the federal paid leave initiatives that have gone through that, again, really focus on employers with under 500 lives. Then we're going to get into the CARES Act, where I'm going to go through pretty detailed, if you're an employer with under 500 lives, or 500 employees, excuse me, the economic relief that's available to you, and what's available to, generally, Americans that make less than either $100,000 or $200,000 a year. So we'll start off with as I said, the federal paid leave, and this is, I think, the best slide I've ever done. I just skipped it. It's a very simple slide, but it is really confusing to understand what the new requirements are, because there's two new laws or two new provisions, and depending on what size you are, you have to comply or not, or what type of business. But this is it. If you're over 500 employees, and the definition of employee here is the broadest possible definition. It's the FLSA, Federal Labor Standards Act definition, which essentially means employee is everyone except an independent contractor. So it's full-time, part-time. There's none of this hours or anything like that, like you're used to with the ACA requirements. This is trying to capture as many people as possible. If you're over 500 employees, you don't have to worry about this. If you're under 500, you're going to have to, and you're a private employer, you're going to have to comply with the new emergency paid FMLA and the new paid sick time. And if you're a public employer, so if you're a government employer, regardless of your size, you're also going to have to comply with paid sick time. So again, you can kind of look on the screen and figure out where you fit in. And of course, there's exemptions and things like that for certain sizes. But that's, you can sort of find yourself on here. One thing I didn't mention that, and I don't know if Steve mentioned it, he might have, but I was, just frantically trying to get online here, is if you have a question, you can put it in the chat box. And I have some places, there's some natural breaks in the presentation, where I'll try to answer some of them. I won't have all the answers. A lot of these laws, the regs are still being drafted. They're not 100% clear. But I'll do my best in the next day or two to get back to you with that. The slides will be available to you. There's going to be some links that I'm going to want to send out after this to some of the new guidance. So if you give me a day or two, if there's a question that I can't answer, I'll do my best. I won't do my best. I will. There is no try. Do or do not. I will get back to you within the next either tomorrow, either later today or tomorrow with the answers as best as we can. So again, just put anything you have in the chat box. So we'll start off with paid sick leave. And again, if you're under 500 employees, the new requirements say you have to provide 80 hours of paid sick leave for your full-time employees. They vest immediately. The Department of Labor has given us a little clarity on the part-time employers or part-time employees. You have to provide them with the same number of hours that they've worked over the last 2-week period. So in other words, what does your part-time employers work over the last 2 weeks? That's going to be the amount of paid sick time that you have to provide them with. Now, there's, I think, 3 different calculation methods to determining what the last 2 weeks are, and maybe they didn't work as much as normal. So again, I'm going to send out the links. I think the DOL has been actually very clear on this particular point, and the links will provide you with very specifics on, in your situation, here's how you can calculate the number of hours, and that's the number of sick time hours that you need to provide with these part-time workers. What's important to remember about this is in addition to any other PTO that you're providing, and these are for some very specific purposes. So this paid sick leave can only be used for these 6 purposes. And as you can see here from the screen, the first 3 reasons are situations that are dealing with yourself. So you're subject to an order, you're sick, or you're quarantined. So those first 3 things are paid sick leave that can be used for yourself. The next 2 are for caring for someone else. And then the last one's sort of a catch-all that we don't really have to worry about right now. But again, first 3 are for yourself, next 2 are for someone else. This is really important because when we go to the next slide, the amount of money that you're required to pay to your employees because of this, because of the paid sick leave, depends on what they're using the leave for. So if they're using it for self-care, one of the first 3 reasons, so we'll go back for a second. If they're using it for self-care, one of those first 3 reasons, you need to pay them their full daily wages up to $511 per day. If they're using it for one of the second 2 reasons, caring for someone else, it's 2/3 of their wages up to $211 per day. Now, the other thing that's key about this, and this changed through the legislation, a couple times, note that the employee has to be able to, can't be able to neither, I should say, work nor telework. So in other words, if I can telework, these things aren't going to apply to me here. And, so I feel, although I work at Sun Life, we're larger, we have more than 500 employees. If you look to that 5th reason, caring for a son or daughter because their school or place of work is closed, if the company I worked for had less than 500 lives, right now, my wife's a nurse, she's not home today. I got 2 kids, 8 and 6, not that you guys need my whole biography, But so my kids are home. Our schools are closed till like May. It's insane. I get it, but it's just, it's tough. But I'm able to telework. So I would not be able to qualify for this sick leave because, hey, look, I'm doing this presentation right now. I'm able to figure it out in telework. So it's very narrow, the reasons that you can use the paid sick leave. It's for COVID-19 reasons. And then it's even more narrow that you have to be able to demonstrate you can't work or telework to be able to have these. But again, depending on if it's self-care or care of others, that's the amount of money the employers that you will be required to pay to the employee. And then this is one thing I have not had a chance this morning to look at, but the CARES Act, the final Senate language changes the reimbursement on the tax credit side. So the idea behind this is you as the employer, you're the closest to the employee and you can get the cash to them the fastest way. In some original discussions, maybe Social Security was going to pay out the sick leave and even the emergency paid FMLA. But the idea was, no, we're going to have the employers do it, and then we're going to reimburse the employers 100% for the costs that they're doing. And so in the original plan, there's going to be some payroll tax reimbursement or payroll tax credit. That was, to be realistic, that was really never explained very well. And even the guidance that came out yesterday really didn't provide too much clarity. And I think that's because the CARES Act maybe changes this to try to get cash back to you as the employer faster. That's something certainly we'll follow up with the communication when we fully understand what's in the CARES Act. But the point is, you as the employer, you shouldn't be responsible for the cash flow purpose of this. The federal government's going to reimburse you through tax credits for this. Now, there is this U-50 exemption, and I just, we had a call internally today because we feel like there's a real misconception. Because when I first read the law, I was very confused myself. The U-50 exemption for paid sick leave is very narrow. It only applies to that one sick leave provision that says if my kid's school or my son or daughter's school is closed and I'm unable to work or telework. If you have less than 50 employees, and again, remember, it's the broadest definition of employees. If you have less than 50 employees, you have to comply with, and I'm going to go back here, I'm not going to make everyone have vertigo here, but you have to comply with everything that's on this screen, except you can apply for an exemption from the second from the bottom, caring for a son or daughter because the school is closed. Every other thing on the screen you have to comply with as a employer with less than 50 employees. Why is that the only one? Is that there's an exemption? I couldn't tell you. The drafting of this was crazy. But to get this exemption, and again, the Department of Labor provided some guidance. We'll send it out after the call. I don't think it's very clear, but they do reiterate that you have to demonstrate why this would jeopardize the viability of the business. I think it's going to be a little write-up. That seems to be what it's going to be. But again, from talking to Democratic and Republican staffers, the intent of this law is that if you apply for an exemption, you're likely to get it. They're not rubber stamping anything, but they understand this could have a huge impact, particularly on businesses with less than 50 employees. But again, it's very narrow. You have to comply with all those other provisions. This is the only one that you can receive an exemption from. So again, we'll send the information that has some of those, that has the DOL guidance. But again, doesn't feel like that exemption is clear yet. But you also have to remember, you have a couple days. April 1st, this was also clarified by the Department of Labor. April 1st is the day you have to comply with both the paid sick leave requirements and the paid FMLA requirements. So, it's March, 26th. Every day is the same now, so it really doesn't matter, I guess. But it's March 26th, so you still have a few days until April 1st. So again, that's why we don't have the guidance out. We don't have full clarity, but we will be continuing to get that. And I'll send you what the Department of Labor has sent out so far. So on paid FMLA, private employers under 500 employees, again, a potential exemption for employers that have less than 50 employees. If I said full-time, that's not what I meant employees. This provides, it says 10 weeks of paid FMLA. I got to change this slide. It's just another reason to get FMLA. The first 2 weeks are unpaid, and then the second 10 weeks are paid. So it's just another FMLA reason. It just so happens that the 10 weeks of it are paid. We've been getting a lot of questions about, is this extra FMLA? So In other words, I was in a car accident at the beginning of the year. I already used all my FMLA up. Is this a new 12 weeks of FMLA, 10 of which are paid? And the answer is no. And, we've worked pretty closely, at least with, some of the Democratic staff in Congress on this to make sure we understand that this is not an add-on. This is just a new part of FMLA. So another way to think of it is, if I use 12 weeks of FMLA for the one reason, remember, it's only one reason. If my kid's school is closed and I can't work or telework, that's the only thing that makes me eligible for this paid FMLA. If I've used this, if I use my full 12 weeks of FMLA because of this, first 2 unpaid, next 10 paid, and then I get in a car accident later this year, or my wife uses it and she has a baby later this year, there's no additional FMLA in those situations. So again, it's part of FMLA. It's not extra. There's no stacking of the FMLA. It's just another reason that folks can use it. Again, there's a U50 exemption here. Again, it's just that one reason, and so you'll see it matches up. And I said $211 per day earlier. I didn't mean that. It's $200 per day. It matches up with self-care for paid sick leave, which is $200 per day. Again, got to get a little more clarity from the CARES Act on the employer tax credit. But again, the idea is you as the employer are administering this, you as the employer are paying this, but the government is paying you on the back end through tax credits, so that on the back end, so that you're not actually financially responsible. So again, a lot of moving parts here, a lot of criticism on these. That, for example, the paid sick leave and paid FMLA do not apply to employers that have more than 500 employees. Some criticism that this emergency paid FMLA only kicks in when your kid's school is closed. So in other words, if I had COVID, so I just got, I was a little distracted there. Kids came in, not on video, so you wouldn't have known, except they were demanding I read this little note card, and it said, "Can we have lollipops?" So obviously I said yes to get them out. But anyway, so back to our regularly scheduled program. Criticism of the emergency paid FMLA is, if I get sick with COVID-19, I'm eligible for the 10 paid sick days. But if my employer doesn't provide me with any other paid PTO, I have no other paid time. Now, the paid FMLA, that'll give me 10 paid weeks if my kid's school is closed. But again, if I actually am sick with COVID-19 past 10 days, there's no guaranteed government funding. No guaranteed, paycheck that's coming. There's no guaranteed paid time off. So again, there's a lot of criticism about that. If you can believe it, again, even though we're not even through the third package, the third Senate package yet, or excuse me, the third coronavirus package, they're already talking about the fourth package and the fifth package, and Democrats would really like to expand the requirements of paid sick leave to larger employers, and also expand the reasons for paid FMLA. Again, this is the same slide I started in the beginning, but I think it's a good opener and a good closer. Again, if you're over 500 employees, nothing that we talked about applies to you. If you're under 500 employees and you're a private employer, the paid sick time and the paid FMLA is going to apply to you. If you're a public employer, so you're a government employer, the paid sick time is going to apply to you regardless of the size that you are. The CARES Act, there is a small tweak to White House employees or executive office employees are not going to be eligible for the paid sick time, but that really seems to be the only, besides the funding mechanism for the tax credits, that seems to be the only real substantive changes. So, certainly it's something, as the next few packages are talked about, we'll be looking at this, but again, it feels like this is what we're going to have. Both of these go into effect on April 1st, so you have up till April 1st to comply, and they're both scheduled to end on December 31st of 2020. So again, more to come on these. This is old news, but again, we've got more regulatory info from the government. We'll send that to you. And again, the CARES Act is going to change some of the reimbursement to try to make it a little easier for you. The real next, the new thing is the CARES Act. And so So now we sort of know things that we didn't know the other day, and we're going to talk about the loans for under 500 employees. I'm not an expert on it, but when your CEO tells you you got to write a memo on it, and it's like 8 o'clock at night, and you're like, well, I've already worked all day. This doesn't seem very fair. You write it, and you then you know what's going on. So with the CARES Act, these recovery payments should be going out very quickly. The president should sign this on Saturday, and Treasury is going to try to get these moving as fast as possible. $1,200 per individual, $2,400 for a couple, $500 per kid. I looked at the language this morning. There doesn't seem to be any cap on the number of children. So if you have 4 kids, you're going to get $2,000 extra dollars. The real caps are going to be on income phase outs. And I don't necessarily agree with how they're doing this, but that's nobody asked me this. The phase outs are hard numbers, but I think that should be 196. But regardless, you get the point. Basically, if you make more than $100,000 if you're single, or $200,000 if you're married, you're not going to be eligible for anything. That's zero. They completely phase out for those individuals. And these figures are adjusted gross income. So again, I'm not a CPA, but it's not like what your actual salary is. There's going to be some things that come out of that. The way they're going to determine if this phases out for you is you have 2 choices. It's either going to be based on your 2019 income tax returns or your 2018 income tax returns. Now, if you filed your 2019 tax returns, you are an incredibly organized person, because they weren't due until April 15th, and now they're not due until July 15th or June or July 15th. That's due to the summer, right? Better way to say it. So if you have filed your 2019 tax returns, they're going to go off that number. If you haven't filed your 2019 taxes, then they're going to go off your 2018 taxes. And, I understand the point here. Democrats and Republicans were pretty adamant that they didn't want people getting checks that maybe don't really need the checks right now. But 2018 was a long time ago, and your situation could have just changed 2 weeks ago, where you got laid off. You're making $250,000 a year. You got laid off. It's going to be really hard for you to get a new job. Yes, unemployment insurance, things like that, I understand. So I don't necessarily 100% agree with how they're doing this. I agree with not sending checks to everyone, and I guess they're probably doing it in the best possible way of, we'll look at 1 of 2 year tax returns, and for those that have filed that are above these numbers, they're not going to get them. Again, adjusted gross income numbers, and phasing out over essentially $100,000 for individuals, $200,000 for married couples. I think that married couple number is 196, which is the only reason that I'm sort of hedging, because obviously 98 plus 98 is not 198. So that's why I'm hedging with the. I'll clarify that, and when the deck goes out, the right number will be in there. Now, maybe the most important thing on this call, if you have less than 500 employees and COVID-19 has hit your business, because it's tough right now. There's $350 billion in loans that are available. Now, here's how the loans are going to work. I get more information than on the screen because, like I said, I studied this last night. And what we're working on at Sun Life is by, I don't want to hold myself to this, but by probably Tuesday of next week, we're going to have a very detailed white paper that talks about these loans, what you can use them for, things like that. But I'm going to sort of talk through what we know at this point. So the way the loans are going to work is you are going to look at what your payroll costs were on average for the last 12 months. And payroll costs is a defined term in the legislation. It means what you're paying your employees for their salaries, stuff like that. Also what you're paying for your employees' health insurance premiums. That's really what they're looking at as your payroll costs. You're going to take the average of what those payroll costs have been monthly over the last 12 months. What's your average monthly payroll cost? And multiply that number by 2.5. So essentially, the government is going to provide you with a loan of 2.5 months of your payroll costs. That's where it gets a little tricky. You can then use the 2.5 months of your payroll costs for a number of different things. You can use it for your employee salary. You can use it for mortgages, mortgage interest, not principal. Paying your mortgage interest. You can use it for rent. You can use it for insurance premiums. This was a provision that we were very involved with. The insurance premium provision is very it's very liberally interpreted. So that means business insurance, so property and casualty insurance. If you have a self-funded health plan, stop loss insurance. If you're paying for employer-paid disability insurance, things like that, life insurance. employer paid. Insurance premiums that you as the employer are paying for, those will be an allowable use of these payroll loans. They're not payroll loans, excuse me. Well, actually called payroll protection loans, but these loans. The thing that makes these loans so incredible is if you follow a few rules, the loan will be forgivable, meaning it goes away. You don't have to pay it back. And now we're not going to get too technical on the call. We're going to do this white paper. It's going to be real technical. But it looks like the requirements are going to be, look at how many employees you had on February 15th. I don't know why they chose that date, but like that's the date that's everywhere in this law. Look at the number of full-time, and this is a term that I got to dig into, the number of full-time equivalent employees you had on February 15th. What they're going to say is when this loan ends, if you have the same number when you've paid the loan back, or excuse me, when the term of the loan ends, so it's really 2.5 month term. When the term of the loan ends, if you have the same number of full-time equivalent employees that you had on February 15th, the entire loan or the majority, because there's always some exceptions, but generally speaking, the majority of the loan will be forgiven. The other requirement is that you continue to pay your employee's salary at least 75% of their wages. So and again, they're going to say, what were you paying your employee? Each employee, there's going to be reporting on this. I'm sorry. Like there's going to be some reporting and there's going to be some things you have to demonstrate. But what were you paying your employees on February 15th when the term of the loan ends, 2.5 months after you've taken it? Did you pay them over the period of the loan 75% of what you were paying them on February 15th? If you've done that, the loan will be forgiven. And again, there's obviously technicalities and things like that, but generally speaking, that's how this program is going to work. And it's really kind of amazing that if you keep the number of employees and you basically keep paying them 75% of their salary, the government's willing to forgive the entire amount of the loan. Now, there's also a provision in there that says if you've already laid off employees because like things are bad, and so you had to lay people off. It's tough. It's a tough conversation, but something that you had to do. From the day the law is signed, you're going to have a 30-day period to rehire the same number of employees. Now, the one thing I'm not clear on, do you have to hire back the same person, or do you have to get back to the same number of employees that you had on February 15th? So again, they're going to say, okay, on February 15th, you had 100 employees. On March 1st, you laid 75 of them off. So today, you have 25 employees. If within 30 days of, let's say the law gets signed on April 1st, within 30 days of April 1st, if you go back to 100 employees, and then on January 15th, or the end of the term of your loan, if you're still at 100 employees, the loan is going to be forgiven. That's, talk about a confusing thing to not have a slide to really explain, but literally, this is like hot off the press stuff. But essentially, and again, we're going to have more information for you on this in a few days. The takeaway is, if you keep the number of employees the same, if you've already laid them off, you're going to have an opportunity to rehire to get back to your February 15th number. If you keep the salaries within 75%, you're going to be okay. Now, for employees that make more than $100,000 a year, there's going to be more flexibility to reduce the amount of their salary. They're really concerned about employees that make less than $100,000 a year. Those are the ones whose salaries you can't reduce more than 75%. Now, and it's not all or nothing either. Again, really complicated. And I'm, even having to write this memo for our CEO last night, like I'm still trying to understand this. Basically, the difference in percentage of the number of employees you have is the difference in the percentage of how much the loan is going to be forgiven. So in other words, if I have 25% fewer employees at the end of the term of the loan than I did at the beginning of the term of the loan, then 75% of my loan will be forgiven. 25% of my loan, I'm gonna have to pay. Also, if I reduce my employee's salary by more than 25%, then dollar for dollar, every dollar that I reduce my employee's salary is going to be $1 of a loan that's not going to be forgiven. So again, this slide doesn't have all that information on there, potentially forgivable. And then I give a 20-minute speech about all the specific rules. We're working on a white paper, whatever you want to call it, that goes through all these things. And, in fairness, that we have, to be transparent, we want to help businesses continue to provide health insurance, other insurance that they have for their employees. And these loans are going to enable you to be able to do that. So, I'm not just to be transparent, what I mean? Like, there is some reasons that we're so interested in this, but it's really a tremendous opportunity if your business is, if you've had some economic struggle. And we will know more about this. Again, the language isn't even, the law's not passed yet, so it's hard to say, where are the regs? How do I apply? The Small Business Administration is going to be in charge of these. Also, for those of you that are maybe part of a franchise, franchises are going to be eligible if you're part of chains, but like Marriott, for example. Sometimes you go in and it'll say locally owned and operated by XYZ company. Chains will be available for this so long as you don't have more than 500 employees at a specific work location. If you're a nonprofit organization, you'll be eligible for these. So it's a really wide net that the government's trying to cast. And again, we'll know more about this in the near future, but the idea is keep your employees on the payroll, keep paying them at least 75% of their salaries, and potentially all or a large portion of the loan can be forgiven. It's also going to be tons of relief, about $500 billion for large businesses. This was part of the hang-up and why it took so long for the legislation to get through. One provision that Democrats really wanted and did get in the end was that if you are an executive, basically if you're in Congress or in the executive branch of the government and you have an ownership interest or a controlling interest in a business, those businesses will not be eligible for this relief. So, kind of targets the president and Secretary Mnuchin and some members of Congress. But that's a provision that Democrats really wanted, and so that's in there. Another provision that Democrats wanted that, again, sort of held things up was there's going to be broad oversight of this $500 billion pool of money. Originally, Secretary Mnuchin was going to have almost full control. And of this 500, 400 is unallocated, and about 100 is allocated. And all I mean by that is 100 is allocated. I think it's $50 million to the airline industry, something like $20 million to industries that are crucial to national security. So people are viewing that as like the Boeing pool of money. There's other money that's specifically allocated for the hospitality industry. So, but about 400 billion or so is broadly for larger businesses, more than 500 employees that have had some time. I haven't dug into those. I haven't dug into those specific things as much as I have with the U500, but it doesn't appear that there's going to be the same forgivableness or forgiveness of those loans that that's going to be for U500. So again, if you think that's interesting, so there's two things I would do. One, I would go to the Small Business Administration's website every single day, because that is where they're going to have, this is going to be the application process and all things like that. I would also know that we are definitely, and I can only speak for Sun Life, but we're trying to create collateral material that really goes into this because it's complicated. So you're going to hear a lot more about these paycheck protection loans, paycheck protection loans. And again, they could have a huge impact on businesses that really need the help. So what we're really watching next is we gotta get the House to pass this bill, and it's not easy because even though it's Sun Life and we're an insurance company, 100% of our employees are working from home. We're all telecommuting. Every office we have is closed. We were just really lucky a couple of years ago or last year. We invested in all this video conferencing technology, and we went to a more agile work environment. And so we've been able to transition 100% work from home. It has not interrupted our services at all. Yeah, we got a couple employees that go into some offices to get mail and stuff like that, but our claims processing, cutting our checks, no problem. 100% telecommuting. I'm not saying that because bragging. I'm saying that because it's the total opposite of Congress. They can do 0% of voting without actually being present on the floor. And so this is a real issue because the members of the House are home. That's, they're in their districts. And quite frankly, they don't want to come back to D.C. right now. They're afraid of the air travel. They're afraid of putting 435 members of Congress together in the same place, or even small groups of them congregating. I mean, I don't think it's any surprise to anyone that some of the members of Congress are, getting up in age, are at very vulnerable, those vulnerable ages for COVID-19. So it looks like what's going to happen, maybe today, maybe tomorrow, really hard to tell, is they're going to try one of two ways to pass the bill. This would not mean any members have to come back. The first option is unanimous consent, which essentially is there'll be a couple members around. Someone will have a motion and say, I motion that, bill, whatever it is, HR, blah, 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 is passed by unanimous consent. And as long as there's no objections, it would pass. Now, typically, unanimous consent is used for things like, I want to rename a post office in my town for like this person. Not, I have this $2 trillion bill that I want to pass. But again, the members don't want to come in. So unanimous consent is one option. The problem, though, is Leader McCarthy and Speaker Pelosi, they're both nervous about sort of the ends of their party, the more progressive parts of the party for the Democrats and the more Tea Party parts of the party for Republicans, not loving this $2 trillion package for different reasons. So they're concerned that someone will make their way back to D.C. or already is in D.C. or has someone that can go to actually the floor and object to unanimous consent. So it seems like that's one option. The second option is they adopt this by voice vote, which is sort of like old school, like aye, nay, the ayes have it. Where you're not actually counting the votes, and again, you need a much more smaller number of people. And again, voice votes are generally used for very non-controversial type situations, not $2 trillion packages. But again, members don't want to. The Senate members want to get out of there, and they're probably already flying home as we speak. The House members don't want to fly in. So they're trying to use, since they don't have virtual voting, they're trying to get around it through some crazy procedural things. Anyways, long story short, bill's going to pass the House today, maybe tomorrow. President Trump's going to sign it Friday or Saturday, and then things really kick in. The checks will start going. These loans will start being able to be issued. You'll learn about how the application process goes and things like that. So, we got a ways to go. And then again, everyone turns the page. At least the lobbying community, which I'm part of, transparently, lobbyists turn the page to coronavirus package 4, because we've been told that there's going to be at least 5 packages. We're not sure what's going to be in the 4th or the 5th, but, it could be extending some of these provisions. Like I said, the Democrats will be working hard to extend some of the paid family medical leave provisions, but there's no question there's going to be at least a 4th and likely a 5th as well. So, the good news is for me, webinars forever. I can't travel or go anywhere, but as long as I keep my kids out of the room, I can just do webinars forever about package 4 and package 5. But all joking aside, I know it's a crazy time period. Hopefully this has given a little context to some of the new information. Like I said, we'll be following up with the slides, the links that the Department of Labor has put out in terms of how you comply with the paid sick leave and paid family leave. Over the next few days, we'll be creating some materials that we'll send out as well around, what some more information on those small business loans as well. Again, we're just, we're an insurance company, but we're trying to be as helpful as possible. I just am a lobbyist guy. I just happen to be, sort of in the middle of some of these issues. So hopefully, this has been helpful. Steve, with that, I don't know if you have any words you want to close by. I didn't get any questions, which can be a good or a bad thing. I mean, I will say before I totally sort of give up here, I'll put my email address here. If you have any questions, you don't feel comfortable asking here, feel free to just shoot me an email. I'll do my best to provide the answer. But we're just like everybody else. We're just trying to put out as much helpful information as possible.
James, you must really be fine-tuning your webinar skills, as you mentioned. Not a ton of questions, but we did get a couple on our end, which I wouldn't mind going over. But first, something that everybody's wondering: what kind of lollipops?
So I got to assume they were blow pops. Like I think we have those, but I don't know. So I just got the index card that just said, "Can I have a lollipop?" It didn't It didn't. Yes, no, and didn't have any other descriptions. But I'm guessing they won't blow pops. Next time we do a webinar, I'll open it up. It'll be in the follow-up. I'll let you know what they chose. But they're definitely
Awesome.
taking advantage of when my wife's not here. There's no question about that.
Well, it's fantastic. One interruption, not too bad.
No, not bad at all, actually. That's pretty good.
So one of the first questions, somebody has an employee who displayed symptoms and couldn't get a test. Hospital nurse advised him to self-quarantine. He was advised to use PTO and not return to work until April 2nd. Will this organization need to go back and put him on the emergency paid leave and return his PTO? So it sounds like, again, an employee displayed symptoms, couldn't get the test. The hospital told him self-quarantine. They told him to use his PTO and not return to work until April 2nd. So will they need to go back, put him on the emergency paid leave piece, and return that PTO?
So I just pulled up the slide for the paid sick leave, and seems to be like that second one exactly. They've been advised to self-quarantine due to COVID-19. So here's where it gets a little tricky, and I know it's hard to get the question into yourself. So here's what I would tell. Again, I'm just the lobbyist guy, but from what I understand, since the amount of pay that the employer has to provide under the emergency paid sick leave or the paid sick leave laws now is capped at, for this individual, it'll be capped at $511 for his wages. So if his daily wages are less than $500 or $511, he's better off with getting the emergency paid sick leave and then still having access to his regular PTO. The employee could choose if they have if their sick leave would pay them more, if that makes sense, to not use it. But in this instance, yes, I think there's not exact guidance on this question. But again, I'm not an employment attorney, just a lobbyist. I'm a lawyer. But it does feel like that second bullet right there is exactly what you just described and would make him eligible for the paid sick leave. So at the least, they have to make him aware that he has options to access this. That being said, I'm so happy I just thought of this. That being said, this employer that asked you that question, they actually are going to control this answer. I just like a light bulb in my head. So you do not have to comply with this paid sick leave law until April 1st. So whoever asked that question, if you want to start complying early, you could do that. If you do not want to start complying early, you could allow him to use his paid sick time, but on April 1st, you would then have to switch and allow him to use the 10 paid sick days that he would be eligible for. So this is a really interesting question because it just so happens right now we're in this voluntary compliance period from March 18th to April 1st. You can comply, but you don't have to comply. So actually, look at that. Just turn the table on the person who asked the question. They're the ones that will decide. If they want to start complying early, they're able to. If they want to just let this individual use his normal PTO until April 1st, then on April 1st, they switch him over for 10 days to the emergency paid sick leave.
Nice catch. All right, another question.
Was amazing. I'm impressed myself.
How does FMLA apply to Ohio employees that are at home due to being non-essential workers, but also have kids who are not in school?
Yeah, this is the $1 million question. So we have employees. This is an answer to the question, believe it or not. So we have employees that are in Connecticut, and Connecticut has the same, like Massachusetts, Ohio. We all have the same, non-essential worker order. So we have a good relationship with one of the Congress people down there, and so we went to their staff and we're like, hey, listen, does the Connecticut order qualify under number 1 for there that's on your screen as a state, local quarantine or isolation order? And they were like, we're not sure. We have to ask. So we have an open question right now to congressional staff on this. However, we've also been working with outside law firms and really trying to look at this. And if you look at the language that's on your screen, this is the actual language from the legislation. the orders that we're all under in Massachusetts or Ohio, we're not quarantined, and we're not being ordered to be in isolation. The order is for non-essential workers to not go to work. And so that, I know it's a crap answer, but those are two different things. And so again, I'm waiting for Congressman Larson's office to get back to me on this. And they know it's open, and I follow up with them every single day on it, because we'd like to know the congressional intent here. But we, at this point, are, I'm not saying advising, but we're of the opinion that the orders that are in place right now do not qualify you for this. So in other words, and this is a tough answer, I'm a non-essential employee, which no one is more non-essential than me, believe me. So I am a non-essential employee. I can't, even though Sun Life, let's assume Sun Life said I could go in. Massachusetts says I can't. If I was unable to telework and my kid's school was closed, I don't think I'm not eligible for this paid sick leave because I'm not actually under a state, local quarantine or isolation order. So what is very frustrating about this question is you have like 15 states that have the same order, non-essential employees not working, and they don't seem to meet the standard that this paid sick leave law puts forward. So again, we get that question out to Congressman John Larson's staff. I know his chief of staff very well. She knows this is very important. And we're trying to turn it the other way to say like, hey, like we have employees, like this is why we need to know. But the reason we really want to know is because we want to know for the question that your client's asking you. So it's a really tough question. There's not a clear answer right now, but we're leaning towards no, they're not eligible because it's not a quarantine or an isolation order, at least the orders that we've seen issued so far. So I know it's a tough answer. It's not maybe what you want to hear, but it just, and it's terrible for employees, but it doesn't feel like these orders raise to the level of the local quarantine or isolation order. Now it's possible in the future, these orders are going to go to like the next level, where it's not just, you can go out if you want, just, you can't go to work, just go to the grocery store, you can go bar, or you can go to liquor stores, blah, blah, blah. If it goes to the next level, maybe those ones will qualify, but it doesn't feel like the ones that are out today do. It's a great question. It's a really tough question. And if we get the answer, I'll absolutely, pass it along for you to pass to the clients.
Great. Another one along the FMLA lines. How long will these FMLA laws last again, and should we be changing our FMLA policy?
So I'm not the second question, I'm not an employment attorney, but I know a really good one that's on Life. So I will ask her that question and get back to you. They go through 12/31/20. So both the paid sick leave and the paid FMLA requirements are through 12/31. Are they going to be extended? I think, that's the million-dollar question here is, now that we have a federal paid sick leave law, and now that we have a part of FMLA that's paid, Democrats are thinking, like, let's try to, if now that door's open, they want to, I know it's very specific, COVID-19, but they want to open that door even more. So I think, a big fight after the election, particularly if there's a Democratic president, I think you're going to see a huge fight of trying to add more reasons for paid sick leave, add more reasons for paid FMLA. But as it stands today, long answer to your question, as it stands today, 12/31/20, and I will ask, like we have literally, I think, the best employment attorney in the business that works for us. I will ask her that. So it's, do you have to change your FMLA policy for the short term? I will.
Correct.
She'll know what I mean, even if I'm not asking that correct. She'll understand the question, and I can get that probably today.
All right. So we have a couple more, and we have about 9 minutes, so we got to wrap up. So as far as the paid sick time, since we have to pay up to $200 a day or 2/3 wages, how is FMLA 2 weeks unpaid? As I thought the paid sick leave would start immediately, and what certification will we need to get FMLA certified?
Yeah, so that's, I'm gonna, like, the certification questions are outside of my world. But again, I got to talk to Marge, who's our employment attorney anyways, about the FMLA policy, so I can ask, and that's a question she definitely will have an answer to. And in terms of the first part of the question, the way it's been described to me, and again, I'll talk to our employment attorney, specifically on this, is that the reason again, you have to remember the paid sick leave is only for son or daughter. I'm sorry, I totally misspoke there. Paid sick leave is for what's on your screen. It's for all these different reasons. The paid FMLA is only for so let me get up here. Is only for son or daughter to care for them because the school's closed. So the hope, or not the hope, the way it's supposed to work is the first 2 weeks of the FMLA, you're also using the paid sick time. So those 2 weeks are paid, and then the final 10 weeks of FMLA are paid under the FMLA specifically. And again, but it's only for the school being closed. But so there are 12 available weeks, only in one. There are 12 weeks available of pay, but only in one situation, when the when the employee is unable to work because their son or daughter is home. I know it's a little confusing. And again, this is a criticism. The paid FMLA only applies for that one reason, and the answer is yes, it only applies for that one reason. Paid sick time has all those other reasons that are there. But I got a couple questions for Marge now, so I can, like you guys know Marge, she's our employment attorney, but I'll ask her later today, and I get back to you with those.
Great. Do the child payments get phased out as well if you're over the income cap?
Yeah. Unfortunately, the way that at least the way that I'm reading it is you're 100% capped. To go back to the slide here, once you get over, we'll just say 98 and 196, you get nothing. It's a hard cap, unfortunately, or fortunately. I don't know. It depends on what side of the aisle you're on, I guess.
Okay. And just to address it, I think you answered it on one of the previous questions, but are any of these retroactive for employees who are on leave now? It sounds like it's going to be April 1st moving forward, though, correct?
April 1st effective. Yep. Everything is effective April 1st.
Great. One last thing a lot of people have been asking about is if these slides are going to be available, and they will be. So we will post them to the Horan website. We have a COVID-19 resource center. You'll see that on on the landing page of the Horan website that you can go to for a lot of great information, and we'll post these slides there as well.
Yeah, so I got a couple questions. Like I said, I'll send the slides today. So you can post them. I get a couple questions here. It might take me, a day. I've got a couple things going on, but we'll get these out, and then see if you could forward them out. But also, I'll pass on those links to that have to the newest DOL guidance on some of these issues.
Okay, that sounds good. All right, we want to thank everybody for your time today. We understand things are hectic, and we're hopeful you found these last 55 to 60 minutes helpful. If you have additional questions, you need guidance or assistance with anything, please reach out to your Horan team. We're always happy to help. Also, a big thank you to Sun Life and James for really allowing us the opportunity to utilize James's knowledge and expertise to really help us and our clients out at this time of need. So, James, we really appreciate it. We know you're a busy man, so thanks again for giving us an hour of your time. And stay healthy, everybody.
All right, take care. Thank you.